Hey guys, welcome to the pandemic episode of Green to Great. It's the Apprentices journey. Our apprentice, Dave Ruffini, and his journey with us on learning to become a master carpenter. Green, working his way to be great. So because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided instead of not doing a Green to Great video, we would instead do a remote Zoom video. So we invited Jason Foley, our friend and fellow contractor, and of course, Dave. So I'm going to bring them in right now. All right, perfect. Welcome.
Here we are. Hey, Dave, what's going on?
Not much, Jason. How you doing?
Good to see everybody.
Look at that haircut, man, or lack of.
So I'm going to be honest with you. My daughter helped give me this haircut, and she slipped right there.
Oh, really?
Look at right
I love
there.
it. You should have just finished it off.
I should have just done the whole thing, but my wife said, no, let it grow in. So guys, thanks for joining me. And Dave, thanks for being a good sport about doing this remotely. Is that your workshop? Nice.
It is, yep.
I want to talk about, I got a couple of questions I want to start with. But before I start, I found something online the other day, and I saved it because I wanted to read it to you because it was so absurd. Actually, I won't tell you what I think of it. You tell me what you think of it. Jason, you ready for this? This came off of a website called careertrend.com. And the question was, what does a first-year apprentice carpenter do? Reasonable question. And here's what they put on their website. The main duty of the apprentice carpenter is to help a carpenter, or a group of carpenters with menial tasks, such as removing debris from construction areas or retrieving tools for the other carpenters. Is that like a 1970s definition if you've ever read one or heard one? It's like, hold on, let me file this. Perfect. That was so absurd. It's on a website. It just goes to show you, you got to kind of filter through stuff. What do you think of that, Dave?
Well, I mean, the first company I worked for, that was not the case. I mean, I was kind of thrown into the fire. And then the second company I worked for before Concord Carpenter, that was kind of the case. I mean, there was, and I don't know why, but the guys that I was supporting, my lead carpenters, were kind of old school. You know, these were some older guys, and they kind of had that attitude. I mean, for the first, I would say 3 weeks, I was just running to the truck and grabbing tools and
getting the board stretcher.
Yeah, exactly. They did try that one actually on the first week. But no, I mean, that is a pretty simplified version of what an apprentice does.
I think that's the problem, though. That definition is part of the problem. Jason, I know that you've had similar experiences growing up through the trades. What do you think of that?
So, I mean, I think some of it's a rite of passage, you know, really. The cleanup, all of that, I've talked about this before on the last video. It's continuous for us. But being the new guy, you kind of know that that's part of your role is pulling out the barrels, those sort of things too. But I think it's also important, if you want to retain your employee, is to let them get their hands dirty. Let them run the power tools, you know, take some time to show them how a table saw works and how to safely operate it. You know, and I know growing up in the field with my family and my dad especially, he was constantly having us do the cleanup, constantly. And even to this day, we just joked about it this past weekend about how he used to really drive us hard. And I can't say I'm exactly that same way, but I do appreciate how he did it and why he did it now as a business owner.
Did he do it with you, Jason?
So my dad wasn't on site a lot of the times. Usually he would just sort of show up for 15, 20 minutes and then he'd be off to another job site. But while he was there, everybody was moving. And everybody kind of dreaded when he showed up. And again, when I was younger, I used to push back against that. But now I look at it like, you know, I'm paying you guys for the time. Yeah. More importantly, the sooner we get done, the sooner we're going home, you know.
And I'll add too that we're kind of speaking from two different generations here. I mean, I've grown up with a very different introduction into the world of trades. I mean, I didn't have parents that worked in the trades, and I worked construction in the summers and through college. But where I learned how to be a good laborer and a good kind of lower tier employee on a construction crew was through things on the internet. I mean, I've devoured every tutorial on YouTube, and there's so many kind of examples out there of what it's like to be a good laborer on a construction site. So I think this definition that you're coming across, Rob, it's definitely outdated.
It's dated. Yeah.
It's something that I'm not sure that every kid, I call them kids, but younger people getting into the trades may necessarily think. I'm saying they may have more exposure to what an apprentice or a younger tradesperson does.
I sure hope so, Dave. I will say that, to Jason's point and to your point too, nobody cleans better than me on the job site. I will side by side clean with guys. I feel that it's important to do all aspects to show everybody that there's no job too menial on the job site. And at the same thing, to your point, Jason, when you talked about, hey, run the table saw or run the circle saw or show them how to do it, that stuff is super important. We've talked about this in past videos, but even if it's something that is highly technical and takes a while to get your head wrapped around, I might just say, hey, Dave, look at what I'm doing here. Or do you know why I did this? And that's just exposure training. And then he goes back and does whatever he was doing. But you pull him over and say, hey, look at this. I just came across this. What's a good way to get around this? Or what's a good way to do this? And you look for those opportunities. I call them golden nuggets or teaching moments, whatever you want to call them. Well, that was interesting. I stumbled upon that and I said, I wrote it down. I put it aside and I said, the next Green to Great video we do, Dave, I'm going to read you that definition, see what you think. So let's talk about what type of, or Dave, I'll address this to you first and then Jason and I can jump in. What specific qualities have you realized? 6 months? You've been doing this about 6 months, right? A year, maybe close to a year?
Over a year, yeah, but 6 months.
What have you realized? What qualities have you realized that lead you to think are important for an apprentice?
Well, I think it's easier to kind of think about the qualities in separate categories. The first kind of bucket of qualities I would address is there's obviously a physical component to the work that we do. So being physically fit, having physical stamina, and being able to use your body to do all kinds of tasks. That's the first and foremost thing I would think is important for an apprentice, because you are going to be the guy that's usually humping lumber through job sites and backing up stuff and moving things. I think the second category would be there's a set of analytical skills that you need in construction. And it goes beyond just problem solving on the fly, because as an apprentice, you're following someone else's lead most of the time. You're usually not tasked with figuring out a huge issue that's come up in a project. You're usually following someone else. Right. It goes beyond those problem solving skills. It's more of being able to, you mentioned when you pull me aside and point out something that you're doing and why you're doing it. When I go back to my task that is less complex, I want to be thinking about those details that you pointed out and how it ties into the task that I'm doing or the task that we may be doing next. So having a detail-oriented mind and thinking about how pieces come together. And that just comes back to observing, looking around at what's going on around you and what the different trades are doing and what your lead carpenters are doing. There's a set of academic skills you need, which as a former teacher, it was always frustrating when people would talk about the trades as if you went into them because you weren't good at academics. You need to be, math. You need math. If you look at some of these guys who frame, I can't follow some of the math that they're doing.
Stair, rafters, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
effortlessly.
Yeah, and that comes from experience, but
sure,
it's just a different way of approaching an academic topic, as opposed to being in a classroom and calculating those numbers. They're performing those calculations with tools and with their body. So there's a lot of math that you need in this job. And then writing. You're not writing books, you're not writing long paragraphs, but you are going to have to eventually write to a client. You are going to have to write to different suppliers. You're going to have to answer emails. You're going to have to take notes if you really want to understand what's going on a job, reading
That's
plans.
really good advice.
You have to be able to organize yourself taking notes.
I
And
know you take notes, and you're the first person I've seen that takes notes. I worked with an older carpenter that took notes, had a notebook in his pocket the whole time. You do that, and you've done that. You picked it up somewhere along the line. It's genius. And because of that, you've been very successful in remembering things and formatting lists and to-do lists. To build off of what you said, I absolutely agree. The manual physical stamina stuff. Although I've seen plenty of, big belly, beer bellied carpenters that were strong as hell because I call them, we're industrial athletes, right? So it's not like we're going to run 6 miles and do, 50 burpee push-ups, but you're going to, be working overhead for an hour, and then you're going to be lifting 80-pound bags of concrete over from here to over there. And it's all these different things. So most, if not all of the like overweight, older carpenters I know are strong as hell. Physically strong, but they're not fit in the sense of like fitness would go, in a sense, I guess, if that makes sense.
There's one more category of skills I think are important to mention, and I think it should go without saying that you need to be humble when you're first learning, and that is difficult when you're on a job site. And I've made my fair share of mistakes, and mistakes cost money, and you're going to get chewed out. And sometimes the person who chews you out may chew you out pretty hard. Fortunately, that's not the case at Concord Carpenter. But being humble and being patient in your learning process has helped me a lot, because it's kept me from getting bogged down in the mistake or the aftermath of the mistake, and helped me kind of figure out what I did wrong and how to fix it the next time I'm in that same situation. So there's a bunch of physical characteristics: analytical, academic, and then the fourth category, humble and patient.
Interesting. I agree with you on all those. Those are great. Jason, before I go to you, I'll just add, and I say this all the time, Jason and I, we talk about passion, and you can't teach it. So if they have it, it's great. If they don't have it, hopefully they're a good worker or whatever. But if you find someone that's passionate, someone who wants to learn on their own and self-teach and stuff, and I self-taught a lot of my stuff, things that I've learned, you can't teach that passion. You can't instill it. People either have it or they don't. You can instill good things and qualities, and you can mentor and coach, but you can't give them passion. I can't inject you with some passion, and all of a sudden you're like the best, most energetic, wanting to learn, want to suck it up like a dry sponge. Jason, Mike is yours, sir.
I find that, it all depends on what you're looking for an employee. Are you looking for a guy that can sweep floors, that can pick things up? Really, what they used to say, a lumper. Are you looking for a lumper?
A lumper,
or an apprentice? Yeah. I think we talked about this before. Do you want somebody that when you teach them something, they're going to retain that knowledge and then be able to do it on their own? For example, today we had a simple project, putting in a mailbox on a job we just finished a kitchen. And Jose, my new guy, never put in a mailbox. It sounds menial. You go on YouTube, find 1,000 videos on how to do it. But we dug the hole, the concrete in, leveled it, and then once we used quickset, once that's set up, backfilled it, all of that, put it together. I cut him loose as soon as we got the concrete and we were plumb. From there on out, explained it to him, left it, made it his mission. And and I say, here's your mission. You're going to backfill this. The sod that you use where you cut the hole out, put it around the sides. And when we fasten the mailbox, I put one screw, let him finish it. And he's eager and passionate, and he really enjoys it. And I think the satisfaction of just putting a mailbox in is exciting for him. Now, sure, could we have literally done it in 5 minutes? Of course we have. We could have. But what is he going to learn from that, right? You got to give a little bit to your apprentice. If you want them to want to be hungry and want to continue to learn, you got to give them a little bit here and there.
He was a good fun. He is really a good fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's all going back a little bit. When we talk about bringing people on, a friend of mine who's a carpenter, he said that when he was younger, an apprentice, was he 45 now? When he used to apprentice, he said he knew he was doing right when the boss wasn't yelling at him. And I know that a lot of those traits he carries on to now with his employees. And sometimes, we all hear it from the older contractors saying, oh, these young kids don't get it, these millennials don't get it. But it's up to us to form to them. And we're not becoming softer. We're just doing things a little bit differently because, these kids interpret things a little bit differently. I mean, Dave, you're obviously much more mature than other apprentices are. You have life skills. You have a family, children, responsibilities. And I think that in itself gives you that focus to want to learn this stuff because it's a career path for you. It's not your parents saying, "Hey, Dave, go get a job because you're driving us crazy sitting in the basement all the time." But that's out there. And a lot of guys find those guys, and that creates their vision on the next generation. But having found Jose, that's not true. There are guys out there that are eager, that are hungry, that want to learn. And I think as good leaders, to gain leadership capital with these kids, we have to let them do things, and we have to let them screw up. We have to let them,
Until Dave and up until Jose, I was not feeling good about apprenticeships because I went through 2 or 3, 3 or 4 young guys, and you're right. A lot of the stuff, well, let's just say the word millennial. There's these millennials, and we don't know how to relate to them. We have a different work ethic. We think differently. We work differently, and we need, as leaders or bosses, we need to change and adapt. And just, get our messages across to them and be able to communicate across the line to them. I wanted to mention something. You talked about lumpers. That was a really good point because some people who are hiring, bosses or companies, that might be all they're looking for. So you might be a carpenter out there watching this video and saying, yeah, I'm a highly skilled carpenter. I work by myself, but I'm getting a little older. I'm 52 now. My back hurts. My shoulder hurts. I just need someone to handle the heavy shit, the heavy stuff, and do that. And I'll take care of the skill. And that's all, and pay them, $15 an hour and call it a day. And that might be what some people are looking for. I'm talking about something completely different. I'm talking about leaving a legacy, teaching, mentoring, coaching, bringing somebody up, and then passing a torch to them, in 10 years or 5 years or whatever that is. And then looking back and going, wow, come a long way. I had a part of that. I was part of that. Look at how good he is. I did some of that. You know what I mean? So that to me that's something I want to do. Maybe that's part of self-actualization and
well,
I
think a caveat to what you're describing, that position, that role that you're describing that somebody may be looking for. A caveat to that though is how long are you going to hold on to somebody who you hire just to push a broom or to pick up debris? Because I'm not sure how many people really want to do that job for a career.
Right.
And as an employer, maybe that's the role that you're trying to fill in your company. You may fill it for 6 months, then that person leaves and you're back in the same spot.
Right.
I think there's a different way, and maybe this is getting at the definition of an apprenticeship. Maybe that person hauls debris for 6 months, and once they've done that and they've shown up on time every single day and they've been respectful and they've done their job to the highest potential, maybe they get a different task, something that's a little bit more responsibility, something that's a little more engaging. And if they respond to it well, then now you got them hooked, and then you kind of keep feathering out the passion in them. I'm not sure that you're going to necessarily find people who are kicking down the door saying, I want to be the best carpenter in the world. I want to do this for the next 30 years of my life. I mean, I walked in the teaching profession, not entirely sure if I wanted to be a teacher for 30 years, but there was enough of an interest there that I wanted to do it for a few school years. And then a few school years turned into a little bit more responsibility. And then it turned into almost 10 years. So I think giving people responsibilities, and Jason, you talk about this a lot, delegating tasks and explaining the why behind the tasks you've given them can really empower an employee, especially an apprentice.
Dave, if I hear you correctly, you were saying, like earn your keep. So you do the 6 months pushing the broom, then you knock them up a notch. I think a lot of folks do that, and I think a lot of people have done that personally. And I think Jason's different. He's like me as well. Personally, I think you're 5 months, 3 weeks too long. I think you sprinkle everything. You throw everything at them that they can possibly handle, depending on their intellect, their skill level, their dexterity, their stamina, whatever they can handle. I think second week in, you teach them tools. Second, third week in, you're having them nail things together, and they're going to suck at it, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to screw things up. We've learned that. They will screw things up, and you've got to be okay with that. You fix it. You show them how to fix it, because every mistake can usually be fixed, and then you move forward. But I think if you start right away with the mentality that I'm going to teach this guy up, that you're going to have a better employee in the long run. And I got to think that they're going to want to stay. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to push a broom for 6 months if no one's going to, pay attention to me and show me how to do things and improve me. I'm going to move on and find someone who appreciates my passion, my work ethic, and stuff like that. I wanted to ask you one question, Dave, to follow up what we talked about, that definition I read, that horrible definition. How would you define your first year as an apprentice? Not rehashing what you've already talked about, but if you could kind of summarize it for us.
Well, it kind of crosses 3 companies, so it's maybe a little bit more of a different answer than you're looking for. But I would say that my apprenticeship was it started off as a lot of manual labor, a lot of moving lumber, and when I demonstrated that, the first thing that my first boss told me was that he was super impressed that I was on time every day. And I was like, why is that? That's an impressive skill. I mean, I'm glad you're impressed by that, but
why?
I'm surprised that's something that you're commenting on. I just thought that was what I was supposed to do. So he quickly moved me to doing a lot of cutting for one of our framing crew. And so I started to work into the framing unit that we had. And from there, it was just a lot of organizing the site and keeping things kind of tidy. And he saw that I had that sense of organization and kind of a logical work ethic, developing a workflow for the site.
Right.
That was kind of what I was tasked with in the last few months of that company. Moving past that company, I went to a different one that did a lot of finish work. So we were putting in a lot of trim and a lot of kitchens. And those skills that I developed, organizing a site and developing workflows, that kind of paired really well with the second company there. And when I was there, that's when I kind of I don't want to say I got knocked down a notch, but I went back to kind of square one. I had to show that I was able to
improve yourself.
Yeah, to listen and take instruction and do the thing and do those kinds of things. But then that quickly changed when I joined Concrete Carpenter. And like you were just talking about, I mean, day one, we were driving around to sites and you were talking about estimates and you were talking about how to properly bid a job and showing me all the different subcontractors that we had on that big remodeling job. So it was a very different experience working for Concrete Carpenter than it was in the previous 2 companies. But I think the theme that runs throughout all those experiences was punctuality, organization, and humility.
Awesome.
You may not have a lot of things to do, but the things that you do are going to be top notch. So whether it's sweeping the floor, organizing, plugging in chargers, I know for me it's valuable that when those things are done without having asked to have them done, cleaning the vacuums. I mean, usually you show a guy a few times on how to do things, but then it becomes automatic. Nice doggy. Yeah. Once your dog barks, mine are going to pick up in the background, and maybe Rob's too.
That's why I'm in the shop. Yeah.
They'll have their own video. But, I don't know. It's just an interesting time. And, I'm glad to hear the way that you were brought, having other people. And then, and then you get to Concrete Carpenter and you've had some other jobs to sort of relate to, and you can really appreciate what you have here. I know I value my guys' time, and I want to teach them, and I really want them excited to come to work. I want them to, come in. Maybe he doesn't know what we're going to do tomorrow, but he's going to come and say, hey, we're going to learn some fun stuff, as opposed to that guy that's coming in tomorrow. It's going to rain out. They're working outside. The boss is going to, make me stand in the rain, whatever it may be. And nobody wants to, be unhappy coming to work. And if you create that environment where people, they're excited to come in, us as the owners, we're going to get so much more capital from those workers, and then the workers themselves are going to be that much happier. I mean,
100% agree.
Yeah.
All right. Moving it forward a little bit, I got another question I want to pose you guys. What tools should an apprentice start with? So let's say we're talking, someone's watching this video and they're an apprentice. What tools will an apprentice or should an apprentice start with first week, 6 month, 1 year. Jason, first week.
Tape measure, utility knife, flat carpenter pencil, and a round pencil. Never leave the house without it. For us with the remodeling stuff, you know, we don't do a lot of framing. We don't do a ton of exterior work, but utility knife is it all the time. Tape measure, literally all the time, and obviously pencil all the time. I would say first week. You know, if you get a guy that's a little motivated, or if they came from another construction company, they might already have either a tool belt, or we use satchels or tool pails, if you call them that. You know, and then the basic, you know, maybe the impact driver, the hammer, the screwdriver set, you know, lineman pliers, your basic hand tools. And then from there,
don't jump ahead. First week only.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So first week, but then from there, they can see what am I using daily, and then they can go pick those tools up. Yeah. They don't need to buy skill saw, table saw, anything like that, but just really tape measure, utility knife, and pencil. Those are, for us, most important.
All right, David, 6 months.
6 months. I would say that at 6 months, you probably should have a tool belt and all the basic hand tools kind of covered at that point. I would also add that, I mean, I think you probably need a circular saw, and I would even say a reciprocating saw, because you're probably going to be cutting a lot of lumber, and you're probably going to be doing a lot of demo at that point at 6 months. And they're kind of an investment. And the way I look at it is like, we ask kids to spend thousands of dollars to go to college on something they haven't quite finished yet, or sure they're going to do it the rest of their life. I think spending a couple $100, and well, it doesn't even have to be a couple $100. I mean, the first circular saw I had, I bought for $20 at a you know, a used tool shop, and same thing with my reciprocating saw. So I think circular saw, reciprocating saw, hand tools, tool belt, I think that's kind of where you're at in the first 6 months.
All right, fair enough. Before I answer the 1 year, Dave, when you came to Concord Carpenter, how many months did you have on?
I think about 8 months.
About 8 months. So you just passed the 6 month mark, not quite the 1 year mark. Do you remember what I told you I wanted you to have?
Vehicle? Oh, first aid kit. And actually, the very first thing you gave me was I forget the name of it now.
Tourniquet.
Tourniquet. It was the very first thing. I stepped out of my truck. You were sitting there on the end of the trailer, and you said, "Do you have one of these?" I was like, "No."
So you're not remembering it. That was true. That was first day. But do you remember what I asked you? I said, if you're going to work for me, I need your vehicle to be equipped with
a ladder rack.
Cap and a ladder rack, a way to transport your tools safely and effectively, and a ladder rack. And if you remember, I said, you don't want to be unloading and loading your tools in and out of your truck every single day, because you had an open pickup truck.
Yeah, I had the tonneau cover, but it was kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, you did. I had that cover.
Yeah.
I remember as a young carpenter, I had a toolbox. So I had my hand tools and my circular saw, Jason, recip in the toolbox. Yeah. The table saw, recip, compressor, that stuff got loaded in and out daily. And sometimes I'd work 10, 12-hour days, I'd get home, I was exhausted. The last thing I wanted to do is pick up a 65-pound compressor and put it in my shed, 55 feet away from my driveway. You know, it was horrible. So that's why I said I wanted you to have a cap and completely encapsulated, and a ladder rack, because as the junior guy on the job site, I want you to be able to run the lumber yard. You know, if we're going to send someone to the lumber yard, we usually send the lesser skilled guys, right? Unless they're doing something more important. Right. So it makes sense that he can do these things as well. So anyone in the crew can go off and get materials and come back. And that's why I had you do that, the ladder rack. All right, as far as 1 year, building off of what you all said, I think you would then start looking at multi-tool, maybe some nail guns, a small compressor. You should probably have a ladder, a small ladder, like a 4-footer, maybe a 6-footer. If you have a truck, you can put these in. And I think right around the 1 year mark, you should probably start thinking of investing in a table saw and a chop saw. I think that's the next thing. Jigsaw, multi-tool, table saw, and the progression should be everything you need to do the job. At this point, you should start to be accumulating that, right? If you're a remodeler. If you're a framer, then you have a certain set. If you're a tile setter, you have a certain set of tools. But if you're a remodeler, you've got them all. So you need to start accumulating them. Yeah. I remember when I was in your predicament, Dave, I would, and I started working for myself, I was younger. I remember I'd get the job and then I'd go buy the tool for the job. And that's how I could afford to buy that tool. And then I had that tool for the next job, and it just, snowballed.
So something that I started doing early on was every week I made it a point to set aside a little bit of money to invest in tools that I knew that I was going to need for my tool set. And usually every 4 to 6 weeks, I'd have just enough money to buy, another kind of larger power tool that I noticed I was in need of on the job site. And as hard as that was to do, it definitely paid off after 3, 4, 5 months. My tool collection started to grow a little bit.
That's going to allow you to take other jobs and be able to accomplish jobs faster and more efficiently as well.
I think it creates value as well because you already have it. So we can send you to certain places knowing you've already got chop saw, table saw, whatever it may be.
Right.
A punchless guy, or go handle the small repair
Yep.
job.
Yep.
We're running out of time here, so I wanted to end the conversation by talking about the elephant in the room. Dave, you've been talking with your hands a lot, and I've noticed we've noticed your thumb. So about a month or 6 weeks ago, hurt your thumb on the job site. Tell us what happened and how it's affected you.
So speaking of, you mentioned being the guy that goes to the lumber yard. I went to the lumber yard on Monday morning. We were picking up stock for a sill replacement. The big 16-foot 2x6 PT lumber that we were picking up, those two froze together somehow from the lumber yard to the job site. And when I went to go take the top one off of the rack, it just took both of them with it. And because they were frozen, they must have just slid right off of the rack. And they call it skier's thumb because skiers often get it when they are holding their poles and the pole jams and they fall and it bends the thumb back. So it breaks. There's a bunch of tiny little bones in your hand and it breaks all those little bones and pulls the ligament. Fortunately, I didn't tear any ligaments, which is what they were afraid of. So when they took this cast off, they did another x-ray and they found that bones healed fine. The ligament was attached. So now it's just kind of rehabbing a sprain. So
Probably
this is
8 weeks though before you get back total, right?
Yeah, it's super tender. This is how much I'm eager to get back to work. But every night I just take my hammer in front of the TV and I just practice using it, turning it around, holding it, spinning it, because I'm just so eager to get my.
This guy's a machine. Where did you find this guy?
I don't know.
But it feels much better every day,
Dave,
So.
what have you been doing to keep your skills sharp? Have you been reading, watching videos, doing anything?
Oh yeah, I mean my wife she's already said we need to invest in another TV because I watch too much YouTube carpentry and framing videos. I'm obsessed with it. But I've been working my way through this book here. It's real basic, gives you a good overview of just kind of basic framing. I love framing. I think it's super fascinating. And then this book you gave me, I've been picking away at, but man, it's great, but it's got the guy writes some dense paragraphs. There's some like heavy stuff in here. It's really philosophical, and there's like a lot of just language in it you wouldn't associate with carpentry, but it's a really great book. So I'm picking through those.
Nash, I forget.
Yeah, George Nash.
George Nash. He's good, and we work in Concord, Massachusetts. There are 200-300-year-old houses here. You need to know how a 300-year-old house is put together so you can take it apart and fix it. You need to know how a 2-year-old house is. And that's the thing about when you're remodeling and you're repairing homes. It's not one track. You've got to understand all of it. And that's why I wanted you to read that book, because there are some methods and joinery and things in there that you're not going to see in an everyday house today. That's why when we were working at Ben's house in Carlisle, where you hurt your hand, that sill was 11 inches tall by like 8 inches wide. That was a massive house sill.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's 2 plates.
Yeah.
I think we're running out of time here, pretty close. What do we have, Jason, on the timer?
Less than 1 minute, it says.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Guy, thank you so much for taking time out of your personal lives at night and your family for being part of the Green to Great. Let's try to do this again in 2 weeks. Jason, thanks for joining us. We always love hearing your input and your opinions. And Dave, we need you back. Hurry up. Keep exercising. Take care, everybody.
All right.
See you guys.
Easy.
Bye bye.
Okay.
Bye.